So, welcome to the Love Fly podcast. And today we're joined by a friend of Eduardo, who from a couple of weeks ago. This is Katherine. Welcome, Katherine.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I am really intrigued about your story because when I look on your Instagram feed, it just looks like you're all over the place, showing amazing backdrops, eating fantastic food, and just living the dream. But I also understand that you've been following the Love Fly podcast as well. So I'm really interested in your story. So tell us about you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Catherine. I have a Instagram page that kind of got born during COVID. I am a hairdresser by trade, but in California, where I live, the beauty business was the first thing to get shut down during COVID. And I unfortunately have been dealing with anxiety and panic attacks for the last
Mm,
8 or 9 years.
right. Okay.
Luckily, I've come out pretty much on the other side now, but for a while it was pretty bad. And during COVID, when it seemed like the world was ending, my anxiety definitely spiked up.
Yes.
And
Yes.
um, and it was very interesting. I grew up traveling. My father was on television. He was always taking us places. My dad was both my parents have unfortunately have passed, which has actually really led to my anxiety disorder. I
Yeah.
didn't have a
Yeah.
single anxiety condition until my parents passed. But my dad was a World War II fighter pilot who landed Corsairs on carriers in World War II and the Korean War. And my mom was a flight attendant. And then there's me with this blazing fear. But so
Hmm.
during COVID, I had decided to just start an Instagram page. I had always been traveling. I have kids and we would always just get in the
Mm,
car and take road trips. And that was part of like, getting them. I had two kids who were very
yes.
colicky. And so it
Mm,
was like, get them in the car, let's go somewhere for the day. And through that, I had always been asked, like, hey, I saw you went here this weekend, or hey, where was that place you went? And I was always planning people's itineraries. And I'm like, during COVID, I'm just going to put everything up on an Instagram page for my own mental health. It'll occupy me since I'm doing nothing. and and so I started with one follower, my husband, and now I've built it to 207,000 followers. And I
oh my
actually left
gosh, that's
my,
obscene.
yeah, I know. I actually left my cosmetology career to do this, and it's now my full time income. I write for multiple California travel magazines. I'm looking to broaden and right now, that's why I'm in Europe to just kind of jumpstart that and hopefully write some stories for
Mm.
multiple magazines. I'm getting ready to pitch. My husband and I took the train from California to Chicago on an Amtrak, and I'm gonna kind of it's kind of I I love to travel. There's nothing better than
Yes.
seeing other cultures and waking up in different places. And
Mm.
I'm so lucky that this is my job. But when I say to people, I'm terrified of flying, they basically laugh in my face and they're like, "Oh, honey, you're in the wrong career." And I'm like, it's almost like I'm a brunt of so many jokes because this is what I do. But it's also my biggest fear is getting
Yeah.
on an airplane.
That's
So
that's
yeah,
phenomenal, isn't
it's
it? That you can.
interesting.
So obviously the desire is so strong that you just kind of push through it by the sound of it.
It is, but I will be completely honest with you. My husband's like, make sure you say this. So I am infamous. This is my thing. And it's hard to do it in the US, but I will get on a plane and get there. It will be the most agonizing, torturous thing for
Mm.
me. Then I will land somewhere and say we're gone for 2 weeks. By
Yeah.
like 5 days before we're flying, I'm already trying to find ways to get home that don't involve a plane. So my
Oh my
saint of a
goodness.
husband has driven cross country with me multiple times because I've refused to get on the plane.
Mm.
So I'm still very much in it, but of
Mm.
course, when you're in Europe, although I have researched cargo ships to take me across back
Oh really?
to US. I have so many searches on how to get back to the US without flying. But I'm at this point now where I'm like, I just got to do it. Like,
Mm.
it's almost like the stress of it is so draining for me that when
Yeah.
I just, it's so hard. And I have real fears, but I don't know if they really are real fears. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're
Yeah.
like, are these
Yeah.
fears even valid? Like, so that's kind of my story in a
So,
nutshell.
well, that's a good one. Yeah. So you're nipping all over the place, and
Yes.
you hate flying. I think that's really interesting, and what you just described about being away for a couple of weeks and then wanting before 5 days before you're due to come back, you'll then be locked onto how can I avoid flying back.
Yep.
That must be exhausting.
It's exhausting. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was actually previously married before, and it was basically the cause of our divorce because my anxieties and he loved flying and he always wanted to travel. And like he
Mm,
eventually, like after the fourth time driving cross country, I really think it aided in the ending of our marriage. So I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's not,
yeah.
I know I'm very well aware that what I do is ridiculous. I know it's draining for people. I want help. I've tried to get help. I feel like I'm kind of that mentality now, like how I got here. Like I'm in Italy right now and I live in California. So I took an
Mm,
11-hour flight a month ago to Dublin. And I did it to Dublin, not only because I love Dublin, but I'm fully aware that it's the shortest flight from the US to Europe. So I then was very strategic and worked. I got
yeah, you
a
were.
partnership. Yeah, and I was very strategic. And then I got a partnership with the train company, and I have now been traveling Europe by rail.
Which is pretty
So
cool. Let's be honest, that is a
it
pretty cool
is,
way to get around. But it doesn't sound like there's much.
but
Yeah, you made the best of a bad situation by the sound of it.
exactly. So, but I'm very like, I wish I could be that person that didn't have to take a 4-hour train yesterday to get to I love trains. Trains is
Mm,
my favorite way to travel. But
yes.
I also know that at the root of it is me avoiding a plane.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So do you mind if I ask a couple of questions about this? Like,
of course, yeah,
yeah.
I'm an open
Right.
book. So go ahead.
Oh, excellent. That's so. What what is it that you are fearful of? What? Give us the list.
So, turbulence is my
Hmm.
biggest.
Yeah.
It's turbulence to me is a nightmare. Like that's. I will tell you that I have definitely therapized myself. I know that it's. I'm a control freak. I'm a control freak in all aspects of my life. I'm the worst backseat driver on the planet. My kids tell me they're like, "Mom, stop. You're." Because I with my husband, I'll be like, "Slow down. You're going too fast." I'm like, don't look at your phone. Like I'm very, and my kids, it drives them nuts. They're
Sounds
like, Mom,
like
he's
a
a
lot,
full grown
lots of
man.
fun.
I'm a blast, let me tell you. So I know that it's a control freak thing. I have no control in that airplane. I
Which is just as well, I think, by the sound of it. No disrespect.
I know. No, it's true. No, it's true. But
Slow
I'm so
down.
bad that like people exactly you're going too fast. You see that bird? Like, yeah, no, it's way better that I'm not up there. But see what's my toxic trait is thinking I will the first thing I do when I go on a plane is I find a flight attendant has the nicest face. Like I'm like, which one looks the nicest?
Oh,
And I'll go up to her and I'm like, I'm terrified of flying. I want to get off this plane more than anything. Please make me stay.
oh,
So
wow.
then they're like, their
Then they
first
arrest
thing is
you,
always like,
and then yeah.
exactly. I've been really lucky. I've had some really, really sweet flight attendants, but their go-to is let's just get this poor girl drunk. And in my mind, I'm like, I can't get drunk. I might have to fly this plane.
Of
So,
course, yeah,
and these
yeah.
these are the stupid, ridiculous thoughts that go
No,
through my mind. And I sit there. I have on my Instagram a reel that went viral, and I have beautiful, like I take wonderful videos, but the one that got the most views, and this is how I'm telling you, I was going to tell you, it's how I now realize how many people are scared of flying because I have this
mm,
reel that's at 1.2 million views. And it's
wow.
this funny video of there's this guy named Pedro Pascal who's like very viral for like the show that he's on. But anyway, it's like him eating chips and you put it kind of on something that is like tedious or kind of ridiculous. And I put him eating this bag of chips boringly on the flight map on an airplane and how I'm like, am I the only person who sits there with my chips anxiously like chewing and watching the flight map for the entire 10.5 hour flight. And I have thousands upon thousands of people
Wow.
tagging their friends. Oh my God, it's me. I hate flying. Like, and I'm like,
Mm,
I'm not, sometimes you feel, you know, when you're suffering, you feel like you're alone. Like I'm
yeah.
surrounded by people who love to fly. And I'm like,
Mm,
am I crazy or are they crazy?
you're not crazy. No.
So it was very kind of like this moment. I'm like, wow, this is the reel that goes viral, and it's just because so many people feel the
Yeah.
way I do. So it was kind of an eye-opening moment for me.
Yeah. Well, it's 1 in 5, generally 1 in 4. It's quite a high number. I mean, that's,
Wow.
just in the UK, that equates to about 12 million. I don't know what that would be in the US, but
Yeah.
that's a lot of people. There's a lot of
Wow.
people. So you're not crazy. Definitely not crazy. I mean, some of the stuff you do sounds interesting, but it doesn't put you in the crazy
I know.
place. I mean, what
And
wanting to
it's
not drinking in case you need to fly the aircraft. I mean, we could
I
question
know.
that one.
I know, and it's like, of course, like I have no idea what I do what I'm doing. I can't even look in the cockpit, like it freaks me out, all the buttons and
Yeah,
everything. But it's like in my
yeah.
mind, I've had doctors give me medications. They're like,
Mm,
just take it. Why are you suffering? But like, I don't want to feel out of control. I
no.
already feel out of control enough. But it might be better. I keep saying, I'm like, maybe I just need to try something just because I'm so miserable. Like 10.5 hours to be in a complete fight or flight mode
Mm.
is exhausting.
So how did you
And
manage that
then,
then to get from? Well, how did you get from California to Dublin? I mean, that's like 10 or 11 hours. How did you manage
so
that?
I'll tell you what it's like to be me for before this all happened. So maybe people understand. So I was supposed to be here 2 months ago. I
Mm.
got all ready. We were all ready to go. And my husband and I got COVID for our very first time. So we had to scramble and cancel everything. So that kind of put a kink in my rituals. But what I typically do is about 3 weeks, and I'm not even joking you. Some people say they do this like a few days. About 3 to 4 weeks, I will start tracking my flight on Flight Radar. And my flight left California at 10 o'clock at night. So this is like, you're really getting like the dark, deep, ridiculous parts of Katherine. So I will track this flight. I'll fall asleep. I typically fall asleep around 11 or 12. Then I will wake up, like, I'll just like jolt awake and check the app 2, 3, 4 in the morning just to make sure that the flight is still in the air. So I will do that. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, it's still in the air. I can go back to sleep. So I do this insane ritual for about 3 weeks beforehand. And the anxiety's there, but it's not like really there. It's like, oh, I still have 2.5 weeks, or I still have like 11 days. I don't need to worry about this right now. 5 days beforehand, I'm in. Do we really need to go on this trip? We don't really need to go to Europe. Like, we've seen it before. Is really anything changed? It's the exact same. Like, I start doing this. We don't really have to go, do we? And then I'm just like, I get into such, I really stop eating. I just don't have like a lot of like my day-to-day things that I do. I lose interest in them. It's just the obsession of, oh my God, I'm getting in a flight. And the night before I don't sleep. So by the time I get on that plane, I'm so exhausted. You would think like I
Not
read,
surprised.
I know,
Wow.
right? And
I mean, just like
and I
just pause a minute like that. So you do,
yeah,
so you're checking the flights for 3 weeks beforehand, make sure they all land. So you're getting disturbed sleep, and then 5 days
yep.
before you're going through a massive sort of schedule of like of denial, intellectual justification. We don't need to go and all that stuff, and then you still get on the flight. I mean, no wonder you're exhausted. Sorry, carry on with your story. I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. And I'll even tell you this go, like I said, I left a month ago today, actually.
Okay.
I started with the flight app. So I'm on a lot of support groups, being in one of yours on your page as well. I'm in there and I kind of see that people say, check your flight, check your flight a few days beforehand. Me, how I am in my everyday life, I take things from like 0 to 60. So I'm like one time a day, a few times a day. No, I go like multiple. So I will tell you, I got so bad this go around. And honestly, it wasn't just so much as an obsession as it was kind of a fascination. I guess I'd never really, you hear the statistics. There's like a million flights in the air, like a million people in the
Mm,
flight on. And I'm like, no, there's not. And so I think I became more fascinated with, oh my God, look how many flights are above me. Like, look how many people are in the air. And it wasn't necessarily this unhealthy thing as it was. It was
Yeah.
partly that, but it was
Yeah.
also, wow, look at how many flights take off and land. And I was getting so into it that I could tell you, I'm like, that flight above us right now is going to Hawaii. It's United Airlines, because I'd watched it so often. I'd be like, look out the window, kids, see that flight? Like I'd look outside, right above us right now is this one. Or and I live,
Mom, leave it out.
I know they think I'm ridiculous. And I live like literally half a mile from an airport. So I always have the smaller airplanes over my house, and just hearing them when I was like having my morning coffee, I'm like, no, that plane's flying, it's not crashing. Like, it was kind of, so my husband will actually tell you, and maybe here's the light in this, but this was my best flight yet. So
Ooh.
I like to think that maybe seeing all of these flights take off and land, and then I would take it one step further and I would check the turbulence and where this flight over Cincinnati was. Like, let me check the air and see what the air is like there. And I'm like, okay, it shows that it's a little bumpy, but their altitude's not changing. Like, I really went into obsession this time. But for some reason, I normally sit outside the gate. I'm the last person to, like, I'm either the one who asked to go on first to talk, or I'm like, let me go in the last possible moment so I can be like, oh, we're not going to go. I don't have
seal
to be
the door. I'm
embarrassed
in.
when I'm like in there and freaking out. Exactly. So I got on right away, right when my boarding number was called. I sat down. I waited for a flight attendant to walk by me before I sought them out. And so I don't know, this was my best one yet. I ate, which I typically don't eat. I didn't mention that. I don't eat on a flight. I watched a show. I don't normally watch anything. I literally watched the flight map for 10 and a half hours. So I don't know. I felt like I was better, but to actually hear my husband go, wow, that wasn't so torturous. Like, you were actually pretty good. You laughed, we talked, I was uncomfortable. I was incredibly uncomfortable, but I knew that I needed to go on this trip. I knew that I couldn't let my anxiety win like it's won before. And so I think there was power in that, knowing that I was committed to
definitely.
this decision. But I still hate flying. I joke, and I'm serious. I would rather go have surgery than get on a flight. Like, I would rather have multiple root canals on a day than get on an airplane. I still don't.
You've lost me now. That is just that.
But I mean it. Like, I mean it. I would rather get put under and wake up from something in pain than get on a flight that if it's a smooth flight, fine. But if it's a turbulent flight, like, I can't. Like, there's nothing worse to me than that feeling. So
yeah. And
I feel like I gave you a lot there.
No, it's good. No, there's loads. I was just listening to this. There's lots I could sort of ask about, but I'm just curious. What it sounded like with that last flight, you maybe turned a corner a bit in terms of your coping mechanisms. Obviously, you still didn't like it, but you were better. There was some elements of what you might perceive as kind of a normal flying behavior, like laughing, talking to people, stuff like that. But there's some work to be done. I'm curious about the turbulence thing. What is it? What's your belief structure around that?
To me, turbulence means we're going down. There's no way I see it. Like, how can a plane go through all this turbulence? The news doesn't help. I feel like I was really lucky that I got on this last flight and that I remained sane, because there was a lot of things recently in the news about planes dropping, and there's an actor named Matthew McConaughey who was on the flight with his wife. Yeah. And so it's like, you watch this stuff as a nervous flyer and you run with it. So I know I did a lot. I listened to a bunch of your podcasts before I left. And then Eduardo, who, obviously I met you through, he's a fearful flyer, but he seems to have really come out on the other side. And so he would send me voice notes while I was in the air. And it just kind of helped. And then he made a really interesting point to me that there's planes that are meant to fly into hurricanes and they come out on the other side. Yes. And I'm like, my God, can you imagine the turbulence on those flights? And they're smaller planes. Like, I was on like a big honker of a jet. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to be logical. And then it's funny. I vision my father, who unfortunately is obviously not with us anymore, but he was this fighter pilot whose sole purpose was to just land planes on moving ships. And I'm like, that couldn't have been smooth air. And my dad says he says he was never scared of something happening with the plane. He was more nervous about being shot down. But he's like, I never once doubted the plane that I was on. And then I think how much our technology has advanced since then.
Exactly.
So I have the 10,000 toxic thoughts that come into my mind, but I tend to like try to quiet them with like, okay, yes, there's all this, but there's also this. And then, maybe it's ridiculous, but I've come to try. This is how I beat my anxiety as well. Like I said, I used to have blazing health anxiety, like how I obsessed about flying. I obsessed that I thought that I had terminal cancer or an aneurysm. And I would go to these dark places. I don't have that anymore. And the only thing that I can really say that helped me was this mantra of, if it's my time, it's my time. Why am I going to lose precious moments obsessing? And that's what, when I get a headache now and I'm like, is that an aneurysm? I'm like, okay, so what if it's what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do in this situation. If these are my last moments, how do I want to live them? And I go and I talk to my kids, or I kiss my husband, or I'm like, I want to watch this Netflix show. And I like to get out of that moment. So I'm trying that with flying and being like,
interesting.
If I'm trying to go to Europe, and have all these wonderful partnerships and have all these wonderful experiences, and if I die on the way there, at least I got on the plane and I didn't let my fear win. So I'm trying that now and seeing if that kind of, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the healthiest way to do things. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. So I don't know if there is one way, or whether it would be right for me to judge what's healthy or unhealthy. I think it's what works, and so even when you're talking about studying what the aircraft are doing and then looking precisely what was the turbulence on that flight that flew over and landed, I think there's getting intellectual curiosity fed is actually not a bad thing. I mean, as long as it's sort of like healthy stuff, that's healthy stuff. So watching air crash investigation to the nth degree, I would put it in the unhealthy category, because even though it's intellectual curiosity, it doesn't help, because all you're doing is replaying unhelpful images. But what you're doing is lots of confirmation of things that have gone well. Why did that land? It had turbulence. It landed. Look at that one there. So I think that sounds quite healthy to me, as long as you can sort of give yourself permission to dial it down a bit, so you haven't got to do it all through the night before you fly anywhere. But that'd be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Got to keep, and the fact that you don't. Definitely. And to be honest, that you're in the standby pilot category, aren't you? So you're waiting on the flight.
I am.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm here if you need me. Any tips?
Just so you know, I'm back here. I got you.
I got the flight tracker on. We're all set. We're all good.
Oh my God. It's so funny, because I laugh and I'm like, that's so ridiculous. But like, in your mind, these are the things that you tell yourself. Your mind, I'm always amazed. Like, your mind is such a powerful thing. And it's crazy. And I'd like to think that I'm turning a corner, but when it's time for me to fly back in 2 weeks, we shall see, because this is the longer flight. It's always going back to me. That's really, really hard. Like, you don't have anything really exciting to look for. I mean, obviously I can't wait to see my kids. They're not traveling with me, my dogs, but it's like the high of, oh my God, I'm going to Europe. This is going to be amazing. It's always the return trip for me. Like I said, I make it there. Like I get there, but it's always the going home where I'm like, okay, how can we not get on that flight? And there's no way I can't do that this time. Like I'm so far from home. There's a massive ocean between me and the country I live in. And so I know logically I have to get on that plane, but I'm just hoping that that this time will maybe be like the last time, that like maybe I am turning a corner here. But I don't know. I would love to one day be able to say that I loved flying, but I honestly don't think that will ever happen. And that's just such a bummer for me, because I would love to enjoy this, and I don't think I ever will. And then you read statistics, maybe the worst thing to say, but like with global warming, turbulence is only going to get worse. And I'm like, I'm never going to get better. Like, I'm never going to get better. So I'm just going to have to just manage it, but I'll never enjoy it.
Okay, so that's some interesting bit of talk there, because if you think about it, with your health anxiety, you've managed to get past that. You've
Yeah.
talked, you've done some cognitive challenge on yourself and managed to do that. I don't see why you couldn't be the same with this, because you've already proved to yourself once that you can manage that. And I don't agree that you can never love flying. I think it might be something that's just a pain in the ass, because you think, oh God, look, I've got to sit there for 11 hours. But I don't see there's any reason why you couldn't get to that place, because, and I'm saying this because you've got some strategies already, and you've also got a really strong reason to want to get over it because of your work. So there's a lot of ingredients in place. So I think we're on the cusp of something here, Katherine.
I can tell you that there's probably in my life nothing that I want more. Like, you want to be successful, you want to have enough money to support your family. Like that's actually below me getting over this fear, because it's something so crippling, and it's something that I feel like I'm passing on to my son. My daughter's like so into it. She loves flying. She thinks being above the clouds. She makes a playlist, and she gets all into this. She's like, this is amazing. I'm like in a movie. But my son looks at me, and I'm like, and when every summer we go to my husband's lake house back east, and it's a 5.5-hour flight, and he stares at me the entire flight, and I'm like, oh hi honey, we're fine. Like I have to like completely like put this whole acting gig on. But the moment there's turbulence, it all goes out the window. Like there's no trying to support my son and being strong for him. It's like, oh my God, this is it. And I don't want that for him. This is the most crippling, awful, like it's awful. And I don't want that for him. I want him to get on a plane and feel confident and fly and be one of the normal people, that when the plane is, I always look at these people and like the plane is bouncing around and there's the guy who's asleep or the woman who's reading a newspaper. And I'm like, who are you? Like, how do you, see, like, I look at them and I'm like, how are you not freaking out? How is your heart rate not 170? Like, I want that so much for me, and I want that, I don't want my kids to develop this. So I'm trying. There's nothing more in this world than I want than to beat this.
Yeah.
So
good.
I can't say I don't want it.
So what sort of stuff have you tried so far?
Oh boy. Okay, so my mom thought I was ridiculous. She was a flight attendant, and like I flew with her one time and she vowed to never fly with me again. And as soon as I got home from this trip with her, she's like, put us in first class. It was and what's the bummer is it was our last trip we ever took together before she passed. And I'm like, this was her moment. This was her last memory of a trip with me. I had just had my daughter. It was like she won this grand prize cruise through Europe that she won through a charity event, and she put us in first class, and I sobbed that was really bad, that I sobbed the entire 11 hours of the flight. I had this sweet flight attendant who was sitting with me in the aisle holding my hand while I sobbed. And my mom, we got there and she was like, I wish that I could tranquilize you to get you home, because I can't deal with you for these 12 hours going home. And so I got home and she put me in this like Richard Branson flying without fear course. Yeah, I tried everything. I did it. And I came out on the other side still as terrified. It's like everything that they told me would not, it didn't matter. Like I didn't listen to any of it. It just felt like I was going through the motions.
Oh, is that the course I ran? Did you come on that one?
It was years ago. So it was, I think that's the one you did. And it was,
did you take the flight?
Oh my God. No. Oh God, are you kidding me? No way. I didn't do that. So I didn't feel to finish the whole, that was part of it. My mom's like, you got to do that part. But I wouldn't do it. So I don't feel like I got the true experience.
Oh, so we might have met before then. I was at every single course,
Oh yeah, then I probably totally met you. So it was, I wish I could, if I could do, I would love to do something like that again. And actually, like I researched, the ones where you actually take flights and you go up with an instructor. And that's probably what I need to do the most. And then I've done the SOAR books. I've done the podcasts. I spent a small fortune on hypnotherapy. And then I went to a woman who did tapping. I've gotten the prescription pills. I honestly feel like I have really done everything, except the one thing that I keep hearing helps the most is flying as much as you can for small flights. And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, no. So that's the one thing. And I will tell you one thing too. Growing up, I flew a lot. my parents were divorced. And so my mom would always take me away to places. I'd go with my dad.
Mm.
He had a TV show that brought him all over the US. And so he would take me, and I loved flying. He used to say to me all the time, "You loved flying. Where did this come from?" And then I went away to boarding school when I was 13 years old. And I was away for 4.5 years. And the only way to get home was obviously flying. And so I would fly home twice a month. And I remember being on really turbulent flights and it not bothering me. All these memories of like getting dropped off at the airport. And like, I loved it. It was like my time. I would go get a coffee and sit in the airport. And I did it so often that it's like, the fear wasn't there because it was just something I always did. And then I had kids relatively young, and my ex-husband, my kid's dad, went on one flight with me and vowed he'd never fly with me again. We were together for 11 years and we never got on a plane. And so I had 11 years to just develop this fear again. And I can't tell you anything really happened. Like, it's not like I saw a plane crash, or it's not like anything. It just was almost like I honestly can't tell you. That's the frustrating thing. I sit here and I try to retrace all my memories. I'm like, where the heck did this come from? But I think the not flying definitely aided in it. And now I, with my blog, like, I travel a lot, but not as often as I should. And I actually turn down partnerships, because I don't want to fly more than like 3 times a year, because and it's unfortunate. I turn things down. Like, I keep getting, it's really funny. This would probably be like my first big step that I would need to make. I keep getting partnerships in Colorado. I really want to go to Colorado. There's places in Colorado that I think that look spectacular. I get invited to different things. I have read that Colorado has the most turbulence in any state, and that landing in Colorado is a nightmare. So I have yet to go to Colorado, because anytime I get something, I'm like, oh, heck no, there's no way I'm landing in Colorado. So it's like you get hung up on these little things, and I'm not doing as much traveling as I could be because of my fear.
Yes. And there's some interesting sort of talk going on there, isn't it? Like, so I've read that landing in Colorado is a nightmare. So you probably go for it, don't you? Your choice of language is like, it's not just.
And you know what?
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting too is there's all these support groups that have these phenomenal people in it who are suffering. But I have to tell you, and I'm going to be very candid here, sometimes I feel like those support groups are not supportive. They actually can aid in your fears. And you'll read something and you'll be like, oh, I read that this place, like, I got that Colorado turbulent thing from reading. Everybody who's gone to Colorado has gone on there and actively complained about that flight. Or, the other day I read about the statistics of a bird strike happening. I'm like, well, wonderful. I never really thought about that. That wasn't one of the things that was in my toolbox of like my list of everything that was wrong with flying. So sometimes I feel like those support groups can actually make you spiral. So I'll be honest with you, I tend to avoid them like the plague when I'm about to fly. Like, that's one of the things I don't go on, because people are so in it, and I don't need to be around people or have things in my mind where people are in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think some of these comments unguarded, I think we have a responsibility, because obviously we run a support group, but also anyone in it. It's important to think. I noticed in the group that we run that people do put a trigger warning, which then gives you the choice not to read stuff. But I do get that. I think that sometimes people's perception of things is not always quite right, and also, it's like talking about bird strikes. Like, the bird strikes, of course, they can happen, but it's mostly, 99.9% of the time, it's no big deal. It's just the bird ends up cooked or splattered against the aircraft.
Right.
But it's so easy to sort of, like, these figures and these statements quite misleading sometimes. And I think this is what happens in support groups, is that the other side is not presented. You don't always catch those. That's quite an interesting. No. That's a good comment, though. I'll think about that.
But I will also tell you this: I'm a member of 5 different ones, and I like yours because yes, there are trigger warnings, but then there's also the point too where I read on different ones are like, there are no trigger warnings because we're all going through this together. Let's like there's no such thing as a trigger on a lot of these groups. It's like, let's put it on here and let's see the feedback. And a lot of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's nothing but comments of supportive people working you through that and being like, okay, this is ridiculous and here's why. But sometimes it's all you need is that little like, okay, I hadn't thought about that before. Comments below it just go out the window because your mind just latches on to that one thing that you read. So like I said, the mind's a powerful thing, and mind tends to run with everything it reads. So but yeah, so they're interesting that you go there for support, but sometimes you just learn more than you you really wanted to know.
Yeah, and you can't unread it then, can you? So I guess you have to be careful what we let into our head. So that's a good
you
point.
Can't unread it. That's the problem.
So what's the plan then between now? You got 2-week flight coming up in 2 weeks. What's the positive stuff you're going to do?
Well, I'm in Italy now. We've been in Italy for the last week and a half, and now we leave for Rome tomorrow. I've wanted to go to Rome forever, so I'm very, very excited about that. And then I'm going to be doing a week through France on a boat that you kind of rent on your own and cruise down the rivers, which I think is such a genius concept. So we're going to do that. And then I have an opportunity to stay even 2 more weeks longer with a partnership. But part of me obviously would love to do that. It's incredible. It's a cruise through Greece. But I also feel like it's 2 more weeks of being here, which I love. But it's also like, am I taking it? I'd love to get home. But am I saying yes to it because I want to go to Greece and I've never been? Or am I delaying going home because I don't want to get on that flight? So that's kind of the struggle I'm having. I'm having this big debate with myself now. I kind of ask people in my life and they're like, Katherine, you get to go to Greece. You've been talking about it forever. You're here. You might as well go. But then at the same time too, I'm like, am I covering up? Am I trying to distract myself from the fact that eventually I have to go home and I want to go home? I would love to see my dogs, love to see my kids. But it's also like that flight is just so, I'm not one of those people who at home sits for 11 hours. And like, I'm not one of those people who sit and binge watch a show or sit like a weekend at home for me is a torturous thing. Like I always have to be grocery shopping or going and doing this or let's go for a walk. I'm not a person who can really sit. And so to be sitting somewhere for 11 and a half hours and trying to keep my mind not going to a dark place is really a hard thing for myself. So I have a lot of wonderful things in the last 2 weeks, and I could extend it and make it even more wonderful. But at a certain point, I'm like, do I just need to pull the Band-Aid off and get home? Like that's kind of, so I feel like that's really healthy that I'm having these discussions and not just running and being like, yeah, of course, let's go to Greece. Which is one more thing I can do to keep me from going home. Like I think it's a good step that I'm actually talking to myself and trying to have a conversation and be like, Katherine, what is this about? Do you really want to go to Greece? Or are you trying not to get on the flight? That's kind of what I'm doing right now in my mind.
Yes. Okay. Oh, well, we want to hear what you actually do, because I think that sounds like an interesting dilemma to have, Oh, should I spend 2 weeks in Greece or should I fly back? I think I know what I'd be doing. But there you go. It's
I know.
It's just for you to it's for you to decide. And these are the sort of things that you obviously are playing with at the moment.
Yeah, and it's of course, who doesn't want to go to Greece? It sounds absolutely incredible. The number one thing on my bucket list. But it's at the same time too. It's like it's just this fear gets so intense sometimes, and I know that eventually I have to get home, and then after Greece, I'll be finding, well, where else can I go? What else can I do? How else can I not get home? Like, why do I? It's always looking like, you should have seen me when I was here over the last summer. I was trying to scramble and find partnerships with cruise companies that do transatlantic floats so that I could get from Europe back to the US on a boat and then rent a car and drive home. So I have to really I have to ask myself, what are we doing here? Like, do we really want to go to Greece, or is it just kind of extending this trip even further so I don't have to fly?
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird and you're like, go to Greece, but I also am the type of person who just avoids getting on an airplane. So I'm just trying to have a
Mm,
conversation with myself. I
mm.
know what I will probably choose, but it's also, I'm really trying to hold myself accountable, and I want to change and be different. And I think that's going to be asking myself questions and trying to have a conversation, like, what's really going on here? Like, are you just avoiding getting on that flight? I know that's crazy, but it's what I
Well,
do.
well, it's not crazy at all. I mean, that's, it's just your process. It's just what you're working through. I mean, I really feel like you're making a little bit of progress here, though. My
Yeah.
feeling is that, well, I know this, I haven't seen it so many times, that it's not invincible, this fear. It's just finding the way that you can unlock it that works for you. And then you get that kind of tumbling effect. But once you start to, work out, you start to see some little incremental changes, it then gathers a bit of momentum with the odd blip along the way. And I really feel like you're kind of, that's what happened for you. I just can't see, I don't know how or when, but just a little bit of progress that you've been making. I don't see why not. And remember, it's like, say, you never had it when you were younger, so it's something that you've learned, and therefore you can always
Yeah.
unlearn it or learn
Yeah.
something new. And that sounds like it's very much the path you're doing with your sort of cognitive challenging, which is a recognized technique. I find it fascinating. I think for me,
Thank you.
your
Yeah. I mean,
story is really interesting. You've got this, your job requires you traveling all over the place and you hate it. That's just amazing, and yet you still do it.
I still do it, and and I have this wonderful page for anybody who wants to check it out. It's Vineyards and Voyages, and it's like I'm all over. And people would, when I say to people, I have a fear of flying, and they go, "Have you seen your Instagram page?" And I'm like, "I know," like,
I know.
and I'm very open with it. Like, I will talk about it on my page. Obviously, that reel that went viral. Like, I am an open book. I'm one of those people who loves to get to the heart of things. I love to talk.
Mm,
I'm just, the human brain and my struggles that I've went through is something I'm very open with. And so I've met a lot of people who have that fear too. And we all kind of just get on the plane. We hate it. We get on the plane. But I feel like I'm one of the ones that's the most extreme. And so I try with my page to, I look at it when I'm really in those moments of fear, and I'm like, no, look at how I was in Ireland on this day, or look at how big my smile was when I was drinking my
mm,
spritz in Italy. I'm like, these are the moments. This is why you're getting on the plane,
mm.
Katherine. So you can, like, have these moments, and you won't have them from the comfort of your living room if you let this fear win. So that's kind of my mantra. On my backdrop of my phone, I have a picture of me on the cliffs of Kerry in Ireland. I have a picture of my husband and I, like, on the like, when you lock it, of us in Italy. Like, I look at those moments and I'm like, this is why you're getting on the plane. It's for these moments. So I'm
Yeah,
trying
definitely.
to just almost kind of fake it till I make it with my
Mm,
anxiety. Like, I have this beautiful Instagram page of me all over, but know that inside it's a struggle. It's a real
yeah,
struggle.
yeah. Well, I think
But I
that's,
want to see the
I love
world,
that.
and
I
I
love
want to
that,
live a big
Catherine,
life.
because I think the
Thank
Instagram
you.
world can look like one thing, but to hear the real story underneath, and that the struggle that you have to overcome, is very inspiring for people, because we see the Instagram happy and think, oh, they're living the dream, but don't realize that what it took for you to get there. I think that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, and
That's very humbling.
you got to collect your, thank you. And you got to collect your victories along the way. I believe in that. So it's like, I really give myself a pat on the back. I'm like, you did it. You land. Like,
Mm,
I'm like, you did it. It's one more thing that you did with your fear didn't win. And that's what
yeah,
I think we
exactly.
have to do with people, is you can't let the fear win.
You're totally right. And also, two things then. Like you to just
Mm-hmm.
say, how can people follow you again, just in case they missed it first
Okay.
time. And then secondly, I want us to have a bit more contact. So I want to know how you're getting on. I just feel like you're really on the kind of cusp of turning. Yeah, I really feel you are really quite close to feeling very different about this. I've seen
Thank
this
you.
before, and
That
so
means
yeah, I can definitely see that, and so I want to, yeah, say a little bit closer to what's happening with you, if you don't mind. I might just message you every now
I
and
would
then.
love that.
Yeah, and you can send if you've got any questions or anything that occurs to you, or there's anything you particularly notice, or any repeating thoughts.
Yeah, no,
Send me
definitely.
a
I
little
would love to
message.
stay in touch. I find this kind of, this talk very cathartic, and just kind of speaking through the fears and feeling like, yes, I might get through this. I might come out of this on the other side. I don't know if I'll love it, but it won't be torturous. It might be slightly enjoyable. So
I love that. That's much better than what you're saying earlier on.
and I appreciate it. But yeah, I'd love to stay in touch, and I'll let you know if I end up going home or going to Greece. It's a hard decision,
Well, you'll probably do both, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, let's honestly, But anybody who does want to follow along on my journey, it's Vineyards, like a wine vineyard with an S, and Voyages with an S on Instagram. Nice. And I have a website as well. So this was really, really amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Katherine. I really appreciate you going back so quickly. And again, thank you for Eduardo to linking this up as well. He was great.
Yes,
he did a great podcast.
He's a fantastic guy.
And this is, and yours is going to be very inspiring, and will probably drop very soon. So thank you so much. You take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll have an update one in a few months' time. See how you're getting on. How about that?
Fingers crossed. I would love that. Thank you.
No, I'd love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Love Fly podcast. I hope you found it useful. Now, as always, if you need any extra help, please join our Love Fly Facebook group. You can also follow us on Instagram at loveflyhelp. And also, if you go to our website, which is lovefly.co.uk/shop, you can see other ways that you can get some help. Thanks for listening.